my sisters, Pamela and Suzanne. We're grateful that you're all here today to remember Mom and Oma. For those that would like to have been here but couldn't come, we're going to have a celebration of life next June. And we're recording the service today so that those that weren't able to come can still participate vicariously. I'd like to share a few thoughts and then allow you an opportunity to share some memories as well. And then I've asked Jacob to offer a dedicatory prayer on the grave. So, I don't know if you got a chance to read the obituary, but Francis was born on July 17th, 1947 to Grandma and Grandpa Burton, Douglas and Etha in Whittier, California. Grandma and Grandpa had moved out of Utah from Ephraim and from Nephi to San Francisco, and then Grandma Burton wanted to act, and I think I learned a week ago from my Uncle Stephen that she just moved to LA, and Grandpa decided to eventually follow like a week later. But she worked at Paramount and MGM Studios, and in the midst of her just about to sign a 7-year contract, she got pregnant, and Stephen was born, starting their family. Francis was born just a few years later. In her childhood, she sang and she danced, and she acted. She loved horseback riding. Her cousin Linda, who lived here in Murray, tells of going down to visit Francis down in Los Angeles, and there was a stable that my grandpa would take them to go horseback riding. And Linda said they'd ride these horses bareback and just run as fast as they could go, and she says that your mom would reach her foot over and try to hook my foot and throw me off the horse, because we were laughing so hard that we peed all over the horses and then had to spend time cleaning them up before we took them back. But that was one of Linda's favorite memories. The other way around, Frances would take the train up from Los Angeles and spend her summers, and she and Linda and Fenton and other cousins would roam the countryside, causing all kinds of havoc. But great memories. Linda's out of state. Fenton's filming a movie in New Orleans, and so they're both planning to be here in June. As Mom got a little bit older, she discovered a love for surfing, and she spent all of her free time. As a matter of fact, when she was supposed to be at school, oftentimes she was at the beach surfing with her friends, and she really loved it. In 1964, she married Don Bolton, my birth father, and the next year, 1965, I was born. The wedding took place at Grandma and Grandpa Burton's home in Montebello, and I posted some pictures on Facebook if you want to check those out. The marriage didn't last very long. As a matter of fact, on my first birthday, they had already separated, and my mom decided to let Don come see me for my birthday at Grandma and Grandpa Burton's house. And he took me out in the backyard. There was just a little patch of grass and then a swimming pool and these high cinder block fences that surrounded the pool. And when my mom looked away, he grabbed me and scaled the fence and kidnapped me. About 4 days later, my grandpa and my mom hatched a plan where my mom would tell Don that she was going to come back to him. But that wasn't actually the plan. So she went back to their apartment in the Newport Beach area, and when she got a chance, she grabbed me and ran for the door. My dad dove after us and tripped us, and we fell out into the front yard where my grandfather was waiting with some of his clientele from the Shanty Club, which was a bar in Monterey Park. And anyway, that was the last I ever saw of my birth father, although I later was able to connect with Grandma Wanda and Uncle Warren, and have some great connections there. It's probably not surprising that Oma would marry a policeman after her experiences with her first marriage. She was waitressing at the International House of Pancakes in North Hollywood. And one of the stories she liked to tell was Davy Jones of the Monkees fame was filming Oliver at the time in the United States, and he would come into the International House of Pancakes and she would flirt with him. So I often joke that I came that close to having Davy Jones as my stepdad, but it didn't work out quite that way. There were a lot of police officers that frequented International House of Pancakes, and she met Russ Butts, who was a LAPD officer. His wife was Nancy. Nancy had just lost her husband, and who was a police officer who was shot and killed in the line of duty. And so Russ introduced Steve and Frances, and they were married in 1968 in Nevada, where some of Steve's family lived, his brothers, their families. And if you think about the 60s, from 65 when I was born through the late 60s, you kind of probably know that there were a lot of racial tensions, a lot of societal tensions that made living in Los Angeles really challenging, especially when you're a police officer. Mom talks about barricading the front door when Dad was out on patrol because Eldridge Cleaver and his organization, the Black Panthers, threatened to kill the family of LAPD officers. So she would sit with a shotgun on her lap through the night. It was a challenging time. So we'd gone to a family reunion in Michigan where Dad was from. And on the way we went through Jackson, Wyoming, and my mom fell in love with Jackson Hole. So by the early 70s, we had left Los Angeles and moved to Jackson, Wyoming, where there was about 2,000 people, and the Hensons were there. Terry's here today. And we became friends at church and at school, and Jackson was it still is a remarkable place. It was especially remarkable then because it was so small and such a tight-knit community. And Mom got her horse, named Jenny. She named it after Jenny Lake in the park. And she loved that horse. And we lived in a little pink house in a trailer court. So we were in the trailer court, but we were in a house, and it was pink, and it was like 2 bedrooms. And Suzanne and Pamela and I were in one bedroom, and Steve and Frances, Mom and Dad, were in the other. And anyway, it was pretty humble circumstances. Dad was kind of a big thing in Jackson, Wyoming, because he came from the LAPD. He was a Medal of Valor winner in Los Angeles and was recognized for his abilities in law enforcement. And so when the sheriff was shot and killed in Jackson, my dad ran for sheriff, and so Mom took over the role of being the sheriff's wife and going to law enforcement functions and all of that. Living in Jackson for me was idyllic. Stepped out the door and fished in Cache Creek, and walked up the canyon. For Mom, it was great too. Our next door neighbor, and the trailer just next to us, was Eileen Ferris. And Eileen loved horses and knew horses, and so they became fast friends and would ride up the canyon together. My mom was tough on me, at least that's what I thought. And I think the reason is because I just did stupid things. I think you probably know a number of the stories, but one time I took my dog Red, German Shorthair Pointer, and where we lived was where Cache Creek went underground and then ran in a tunnel under Jackson, came out in Flat Creek on the other end of town. And one Sunday I decided that Red and I were going to walk that tunnel. Of course I didn't tell anybody. I wouldn't have told anybody because I wouldn't have been allowed to do that. We had to swim about the last 100 yards as the Cache Creek flows into Flat Creek, but I got grounded for a month. It was in October, and I did not go trick-or-treating that year. So on one other occasion, I got in trouble. So we didn't have much money, so if you wanted chewing tobacco, you had to steal it. Mom wasn't going to buy it for me. And she had made me this new coat, and it was one of those quilted coats. And so I cut out the stitching on the top of one of the quilts, and it fit a can of Copenhagen in there, just real sweet, nice, right? The problem is, when you go home and your mom says, hey, let me fix that sleeve, and you leave it in there, instead of taking it out, you get in trouble. So I got in trouble for that. Anyway, I say my mom was tough. I think she was just being a good parent. Steve and Frances divorced, and we moved to Kalispell, Montana when I was 12. And Mom was just trying to make a new start of things. And we eventually built a home out west of town. And that was a pretty neat place to live, too. One time, my friends Mike Flagg and Kevin Scheidel and Warren Nichols and I had been out messing around. And I had a very strict curfew, whereas most of them did not. And we were home. We lived out of town, so we'd driven home, and we were outside the house, but we sat there and talked for a few hours. We were actually talking about kind of some deep things, which doesn't always happen with teenage boys. It was a really remarkable experience for me, but my mom didn't know we were there, and I didn't realize that she didn't know we were there. So when I walked in the door, my 5-foot-tall mom leveled me, just knocked me right on my butt. And so just one more example, she was tough. I think she was just very protective and wanted me to stay out of trouble. One other example from Kalispell that I'll share, I'd gotten a new boombox, a stereo, radio and cassette deck, and I wanted to take it and show my friends at Mutual, so I took it to church. And one of my friends, Warren Nichols, who I mentioned, he had an older brother who was huge. I thought he was 300 pounds. He was probably like 170, but he was way bigger than us, and he took my boombox that night at Mutual. So I went home, my mom says, where's the boombox that you just got? And I said, well, you know Willard? She goes, oh yeah, I know Willard. Well, he took it. So she drops down on her knees and she starts praying. She says, Heavenly Father, Willard Nichols has taken Eric's boombox. We're going to go get it. Please give him the power to beat up Willard Nichols. So we get in the car and drive back into town where Willard lived in his own apartment, and knocked on the door, and I was scared to death. And I don't know if it was my mom's 5-foot presence or if there were like angels standing behind us with swords drawn. I'm not sure, but he gave it back without any problem. We left Kalispell and moved to Hendersonville, Tennessee. My mom loved the Oak Ridge Boys, and she especially liked William Lee Golden. And William Lee Golden was into like mountain lion stuff, black powder rifles and teepees and that kind of stuff. So we actually moved into the neighborhood where the Oak Ridge Boys lived. Went to Hendersonville High School, my last year of high school, and Mom got into that stuff and really enjoyed it. And then I left and went to BYU, went on a mission. She moved back to Jackson. She was an outlaw in the shootout on the town square during the summers. She worked for the law firm of Jerry Spence. And over the years, she worked for Warfield Fossil. She tended bar at the Pines Bar in Payne, Wyoming. She mowed greens at one of my best friends, who's a golf course superintendent, or has been, knows Star Valley Golf Course, and she mowed greens and fairways there. She even mowed for Jerry for a couple of summers anyway. Did a lot of different things, and eventually retired and bought a home in Nephi, Utah. From there she moved to Harriman, and then from there to Hamilton. I love my mom. I'm grateful for her protection and care. She loved gemstones, and even more than gemstones, she loved her grandkids. And you are precious to her. And so I want you to remember how precious you are to her. And as a token of that, Stephanie, would you come up and help me? So, and for those of you that aren't here, there are a lot of gemstones. So we'd like you, those of you that are here that would like to choose a gemstone to remember Oma by. And next June, those that aren't here, you'll have an opportunity to do the same. And so we'll take just a minute to do that.
Where would she get these gemstones?
Oh my gosh. Everywhere. Everywhere. She also loved the idea of panning for gold. And if you go to her memorial site on Facebook, I posted some birthday wishes from a few years ago, and one of them is Uncle Dewey and Aunt Vicky. And Uncle Dewey says, I'm going to go down to Charlotte, and I'm going to dig under one of the buildings and get you some dirt to find some gold. While we're finishing up, picking out some gemstones to remember Oma by. For those that are participating vicariously through the recording, I just want to note who's here. Eli and Miranda Rogers, Nate and Lelsey Lewis and their children, Ella, Faye, and Nora, Kinsey Rogers, Jacob and Catherine Rogers, Hugh Wilkins, Jerry Preisendorf, and Terry Henson, my wife Stephanie. Thank you for being here. I'll conclude with the philosophy that Oma would repeat to me again and again, and it comes, I think, from Polonius and Shakespeare's Hamlet, in which he says, this above all else, to thine own self be true. I'm not always sure what she meant by that, but I know that there's wisdom in it. To thine own self be true. With that, I express my love for my mom, my gratitude for the love of so many, and the support of so many on her behalf, and allow those that are here that would like to share some memories before the dedication of the grave.
I wanted to go first because just with what my dad just said about that quote, to thine own self be true, it reminded me of one of the, I guess, life lessons that I learned from Oma. As a kid, I used to say, just kidding, after everything I said, because I was, I guess, insecure, and I didn't want someone to disagree with me or think what I thought was weird or anything like that. And I remember I would say it at Oma's house when we go to visit, because I said it everywhere. And she said, I remember the one time she said, stop saying that, and I could tell she was like over it, right? And she was like, you have to stop saying that. She's like, if you have something to say, don't be afraid. And say it because it's what you want to say, and don't care what other people think about it. And I think that comes directly from that same vein of to thine own self be true. And think that's something, I never said it again after that, and I don't say it now because I just, Oma comes into my brain, and when my kid says it, because she's learned it from a family friend, I recognize she started saying it when they would say it, and I said, don't say that. My Oma taught me, like, you don't say that, you just say what you want to say. So I hope that keeps going through our family. And Jacob and I were talking last night. We feel like a lot of our siblings, a lot of our memories of Oma are kind of group memories because we spent a lot of time with her all together. And, you know, she always had Oreos. She always had the good cereal with sugar and that we actually wanted. And she always, like, we had so much fun at her house. I remember when she moved to Nephi, there was rooms for us grandkids to stay in. And she had, you know, like, there's a room for the girls where she bought special bedding just for the girls, where it was white and lacy with lilacs, and, like, we had our own beds and our bedding. And her dog Wiser, who was our dog Wiser, her dog Wiser would come and sleep in the bed with me, and she would tell me that, you know, he's just watching out for you. If he feels like you're worried, he's just going to come and spend the night with you since you're not with your parents. And we'd play video games together. She loved Lara Croft. She was her video game hero. And she taught us how to play, and she would play with us. And we just always had a lot of fun over there. And she was a big animal lover. She loved horses, like Papa was talking about, but she loved her dogs and loved her cats. And I feel like kind of passed that love of animals on to us as well. And she was just really cool. Like, as you know, she did a lot of really cool things in her life, and I think that's something that I'll remember is just everything. She just thought something was cool and she ran with it, and she just did it because she loved it. And she was true to herself in that way. She didn't try to be someone she wasn't, and she shared what she loved with others. And I don't think any of us kids will ever feel like she didn't love us. You know, she definitely did, and we felt protected by her and loved by her. And I think that's a legacy of hers that will pass along through our families and our kids, and just that love and protection and how important family was.
I wanted to represent Katie, my oldest. She says, my beautiful Oma passed away this week. So many memories of my childhood with her. She took me to get my hair colored for the first time. We were watching Monk together, and I loved Sharona's strawberry blonde hair. So she recorded it on a VHS and lugged a small VHS TV to the salon so we could show the stylist. She got me hooked on Tomb Raider, my favorite video game to play to this day. Actually, wanting to be like Lara Croft was one of the reasons I joined the Army. We watched a lot of mystery detective shows, and I'm sure that had a huge influence on my current true crime interests. She was a paralegal at one time, and I'm a paralegal. She always had an unending supply of Oreos. You see a theme here. I think Eli consumed 90% of them. She was a surfer, bartender, rebel who also collected fossils. I didn't get to see her much the last 10 years or so, and I'm so sad I won't get to tell her about my new journey to be a bikini competitor. I knew she would have been so proud and would have responded with a resounding, hell yeah. Oma, I love you, I miss you. My first show will be dedicated to you.
So, I was definitely, I mean, I'm the youngest, so I don't have as many of the older memories that my older siblings do. But I do remember all of the good memories that I have with Oma. I remember I'm not sure if I remember as much as being told about it and thinking I remember it. But remembering when I was little and my older brothers would get to go to Oma's house and I still had to stay home because I was too little to go. And so I remember being 3 and saying, I'm 3, like, I'm old enough to go now. And I remember when I finally did get to start going, like, how, like, fun it was just to be there and how I was just happy to be included with my siblings and with Oma. I remember she bought me, like, one of the only and my most favorite Barbies that I ever had, because my mom wouldn't buy it for me. And I remember having, like, Scooby snacks at her house and just, like, all the good food, like Wellesley said, that we couldn't have at home. And I remember one time she stepped out in her backyard and I don't know why, but I locked the door behind her. And I don't remember if she was, like, knocking on the door to get back in. Eventually she made it back inside and she was like, don't lock the door when I'm outside. It was, like, one memory that's always stuck with me. And, like, her love of gems she passed on to me too. And I remember, like, for Christmas one year she gave me and my sisters, like, a little bag of gems and I was able to make some rings out of them. And I remember, like, when we would go spend time at her house, like, once a month or something, and, like, helping her organize things and clean things. I still love organizing and cleaning things, and I think, like, some of that stems from that. I just had such a good time being there and doing that with her. And sometimes when our parents would leave and me and Jacob would still be left with her, we'd be, like, watching random shows about, like, snakes or, like, history. I just remember it was just, I never had a bad time. So.
To speak to what Kay was saying about never having a bad time, I completely agree, and I can't remember a time that we didn't love just hanging out with Oma. Whether that was playing video games like Longheads or Tomb Raider, or watching shows, and if anyone was lucky enough to wake up in the morning to watch the Ellen Show with her, how she absolutely loved that. I think a lot of pieces that I find about myself today come from her, and especially the "to thine own self be true" that I didn't used to feel or align myself to that whatsoever, and I think that later in my adult life I have that opportunity, and I feel like a natural shift and a change of, like, who cares what other people think? Like, this is what I want to do. I'm still new, terrible at that, but it's something that I look into my memories of her to see and to exemplify that. I mean, I definitely remember being a little hellion now as an adult person to poor Oma, and how I was off the walls, running around her wonderful, for those who don't know, her home in Nephi, it all connected around, like, a central thing that was like a wall. You could go around the kitchen, through the back to the laundry room, through a door that went to her room, and then through to the living room, and then do it all again. I used to just run it. I don't know why. That same loop over and over and over again, until I was told at one point I would, in front of the living room while they all watched a show, I can't take it anymore, and then just zonk out, just absolutely fall asleep, or just, I don't know, but I get to keep those memories of spending those nights with Oma. She read the Red Tail, the Red Tag book to me, and a few other of my absolute favorites. And I think of that as an amazing gift. And even later, like Kinsey said, getting to help her clean and doing that once a month thing where we got to go spend time with Oma and clean up a little bit. All of those times I see are gifts that we all get to keep. And I'll cherish those always as well.
I think one of the earliest memories that I have was when we were living in Lehigh, and I don't know how old, but I think some family friends were over, someone was over and was asking me, who Oma was. And they were like, "Who's your grandma?" And I was like, "It's not my grandma, that's Oma." So, with the theme of to thyself be true, she was different. She was different. But with all the memories, 99% of the Oreos consumed. She was always very supportive with everything that the grandkids would do. I think relationships were never perfect. There's definitely strain. But we never doubted that she loved us. So it's been tough, but we love you, Oma.
Dear Heavenly Father, by the power and the authority of the Melchizedek priesthood, we dedicate and consecrate this burial plot as a resting place for the body of the deceased, Francis Rogers, Francis Weeks. And we ask and pray that this be a hallowed and protected place until the resurrection. Dear Heavenly Father, I ask that thou would please help us keep in our hearts and in our minds the memory of our dear beloved Oma. We ask that thou would please help her wonderful influence to stay with us. And we ask that thou would help and calm the hearts and the minds of those gathered here today and those who will be watching and reviewing the recording, and those planning and wishing to be here. To know that everything is and will be alright. That Oma is okay. And with thee. We ask that God please help us in this hard time that we have, understanding the meaning, the significance, and the pain of death, that we may feel both thy, but especially her love for all of us. And we especially ask and request that thou would please help her feel our love. We love thee, and we love Oma. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.